Thank you so much for being here today. It's a pleasure. And we'll get into the topic right away. As you can see, the title is Human and Non-Human Interaction in La Quattro Volte. Hello, Professor Josh. It's a pleasure to see you here. Yeah, so today we enter Michelangelo Framartino's La Quattro Volte, which is a 2010 film that quietly reimagines cinematic reality and invites us to see the world through a more than human lens. And my goal in the end, I don't know I can achieve that or not, but just let's put it as a claim there. Reality here I see not behind the screen, but the medium itself is the reality. And let's see how it works out there. So at its core lies an extraordinary protagonist. Now this extraordinary protagonist is not human or non-human, one entity transforming through 4 realms of existence. As you can see the title as well, La Quattro Volte, which is 4 times, translates as, or that here times can be referred as realms as well. The Goatharder, our first character that we would soon see, his simple rituals dissolve into the rhythms of nature, merging with the beings around him until the boundaries between man, animal, plant, and mineral vanish. This is not a story of discrete lives, but of shared becoming. A cinematic ontology that gestures toward a quantum perspective of reality, drawing from Karen Barad's. This quantum view of reality refuses to separate life from matter, self from environment. It is a world where existence flows. Without dialogue or conventional arts, the film does speak with the audience, not to it. Through its unique, natural, if I can say, mise-en-scène, quite uncontrolled by any human storytellers. The cyclical metamorphosis of life that we'd see in this film, I'll show you a few sequences, is rendered not as inert objects, but as dynamic processes in constant flux. These moments invite the viewer to witness the quote-unquote entangled co-constitution of matter and meaning. In Barad's words. The film was shot in and around the Calabrian village of Caulonia in southern Italy, near the ancient city of Crotone, where Pythagoras founded his school around 530 BCE. The reason I'm saying it, as you can see on screen as well, Pythagorean thought that views the soul as immortal and capable of transmigrating through various forms of life, including plants, animals, within a cosmic cyclic order, and the film setting is in the same place. But that's not the only way to talk about this cosmic soul transmigration. I know various other traditions and religions and also philosophy talk about it, and we'll get there in the end. So in this way, La Quattro Volte becomes both a cinematic mediation on ecological interdependence and a return to the philosophical ground from which such ideas sprouted. So what I'll do here, I'll talk over the scenes. There's no dialogue, and it will be a good background, I guess. But before, I should pause it for a while. Let's have a look at the way the scene starts, and then I'll get through it as well at the same time. But I'm here. Agency here is no longer an attribute of isolated entities, but emerges from intra-actions of the world, where beings and elements enact their existence relationally. Here, agency arises within relationships between goat, earth, smoke, and air, as you can see, and also camera and viewer. These are inseparable processes by which matter and meaning emerge together, which not only shape a world, but also the way we understand it. Quoting Barad, primary ontological units are not things, but phenomena. Not words, but material discursive practices. And in this film, camera, long take, soundscape, and montage, and such such apparatus or technicalities are not only aesthetic choices or discourse, but also actively shape what comes into being. And there comes the title of it. In Agency, at the time of the Anthropocene by Bruno Latour, it calls for the redistribution of agency, a move that decenters humans and proposes a new kind of earthbound politics where storytelling, science, and ethics are re-articulated around Gaia's enmeshment of subjects and objects. We'll get to that point, how this duality is deconstructed and the non-dualism that works in this film. Gaia is a name, just to give a context, is a name for Earth as a complex, living, dynamic, relational system, known as Gaia hypothesis, proposed in 1970. Now, we see such relational dynamic system without a stable protagonist in this film, and we'll soon see the first protagonist, the goat herd. We see all these entity and lives through cyclical transformations, which embody what Caracciolo would call a non-dual mesh-like ontology in his book, Narrating the Mesh. Caracciolo argues that in the Anthropocene, it is not enough to simply write about humans as agents. Rather, matter, climate, geology must also be treated as actants. These are entities capable of action in the narrative, and particularly with reference to this film. So Caracciolo builds on Bruno Latour, who asserts that Earth itself is now a historical actor, an agent of what he proposed to call our common geostory. The film is full of indexical traces, dust, clouds, smoke, curling from charcoal. They are not signs to interpret, but phenomena to experience. The viewer is drawn into a perceptual, that's our first character, a perceptual relationship with non-human rhythms, not through character-driven causality, but through eco-phenomenological witnessing, through a cinema that simply points and says, look, this is happening. Let's have a look at the death sequence of our first character. So in the following sequence, we just saw the goat climbed up the stairs, went to the room, the person died, the goat was pregnant. In the following sequence, such transcendence becomes tangible through subscendence, as Timothy Morton coined. The pregnant goat, seen earlier, bidding farewell at the old man's deathbed, gives birth to a kid. The newborn moves through the same spaces in the film, in the next few sequences, that was once occupied by the goat herd, by the way. echoing his daily routine, standing by the same door, navigating the same paths, and interacting with the same village landmarks. In this seamless transfer of agency, the film subtly shifts its protagonist from goatherd to the goat, inaugurating the second realm of existence. This cyclical narrative suggests that death is not an end but a transformation, a celebration of life as it continues in new forms. Another instance of subsendence agency occurs when the newborn goat, this one, separated from its herd and during their routine grazing, and it finds itself lost in the wilderness. We'll get to the scene. That's the scene. As I said, it got lost in the wilderness, and the goat cries, as you can see, and whines that punctuate the growing dissolution as the evening draws near, encapsulating its instinctual search for safety. The goat discovers, after a few minutes, a towering, charismatic tree captured poignantly through a point of view shot, match cut with a meet-close portrait of the goat looking at the tree. And that's the shot. Now it will give a look at the tree. There's the point of shot. And it will take shelter under the tree. The goat succumbs to the winter cold beneath the tree. And with a jump cut, the narrative suggests a metaphysical shift. We assume the goat died and the soul transferred to the tree. And the tree was cut by the villagers for their regular purposes and brought to their place where they process it and make charcoal and minerals. The film refuses to explain how the soul travels from man to goat to tree to charcoal. It simply lets it happen. The transformations are undecidable but viscerally present, offering instead a relational ontology where medium and message collapse into a single act of becoming. As Juliana Bruno suggests, that these atmospheric screens that has been used a lot of times in this film, like fog, smoke, and dust, these reframe natural phenomena as emotional textures, binding perception, matter, and energy into a shared rhythm. In Gaston Bachelard's terms, they evoke a kind of rhythm analysis where vision becomes vibration. Now, while talking about vibration, here I'll complicate it and shift my vocabulary a bit to Sufi cosmophenomenology. To read this film, where being, as you can see, the translation of in Arabic would be wujud, and kon means cosmos, but there is a difference. The way we understand the language in English, so I'm switching vocabularies to Sufi vocabulary, but translating it as well as much as I can explain. I will try my best. So being continuously marries possibility to create the engendered world, which is kon. So atom and the universe, that concept, that how it kind of has that similarity and the same thing. And I'm quoting from Ibn al-Arabi's Imaginal Cosmology. In translation, it would be Khayal. So this Imaginal Cosmology in the book by William Chittak, the title of the book is, if anyone is interested, The Sufi Path of Knowledge, Ibn al-Arabi's Metaphysics of Imagination, which makes us think cinema ontologically, not as representation, but as manifestation. Manifestation because it's not a copy of the real, but it's something that appears or reveals itself directly. For example, how light manifests energy, how breeze manifests the presence of wind. So la quattro volte becomes an audiovisual, another word I'll use, barzakh. Barzakh is in-betweenness, the liminal stage, the intermediary realm. In broader sense, cinema, screen are the intermediary realms. So my final claim perhaps would be, it's not a window through which we see, but it is the reality itself that makes or creates or enacts what we can see. So we'll get there. So la quattro volte becomes an audiovisual barzakh, a Sufi term, an imaginal threshold or intermediary realm, a cloud in which sensory forms reflect the real's breadth. It does not represent the world, it rebreathes it. It inhales and exhales it. We witness the world as living traces of ongoing breath. And to quote Chittak, the breath defines the dynamic relationship between the non-manifest and manifest as the unseen and the seen. In apophatic spirit, like the negation methodology, the goat is not a goat, the tree is not a tree, in that sense, these point out not to what is, but what exceeds being. Manifesting the real through their ungraspability, each manifests being. In this light, the film becomes a cinematic barzakh, a threshold between perception and mystery, form and formlessness, where we encounter the truth not as essence, but as appearance, infused with realness. And here comes Laura Mark's, the new book, The Fold from Body to Cosmos, where she proposes a triadic model of reality, rooted in cosmic semiosis where everything is media. And when I'm talking about everything is media, just let me give you a little background to it. All entities participate in the book by Laura Marx, which says participate in sign action, all entities as human, non-human, animal matter. Sign action through perception and prehension. This prehension is not necessarily cognition. It's that sensory experience through which human, non-human, it's a non-human way of seeing as well, grasping, not only through cognition or visibility. So every image indexes its source, meaning everything is an index of cosmic history. This unfolding process resists dualism and privileges effective haptic, non-human ways of seeing. Touching the infinite, not just representing. It's a cinema of not telling, but of touching. What Bharat calls agential interactivity, I understand from Laura Marx as prehending the infinite, grasping the infinite. And that's the last slide, by the way. I guess I'm running out of time, am I? Oh, yeah, a little bit, right? Cool. So final takeaways could be, to circle back, how might we understand this film as not depicting reality, but touching its folds, allowing viewers to engage in an eco-phenomenological perception of becoming? Can we approach this film as a cosmic monad as atom and as well as cosmos, one entity? Asking, how does it feel the infinite? It as in the film. How does this film feel the infinite? So La Quattro Volte grounds index and trace not in human-centered representation only, but in an elemental eco-phenomenological cinema where cinema can trace the real beyond the human. We might see this cyclical metamorphosis, as I have said in the beginning, in other philosophical resources, how man becomes goat and tree and charcoal, not as a visual metaphor. Now I'll bring another word, samsar. Samsar means the world or wandering or also cycle. It's a Sanskrit word that we find in the Upanishad or in Hinduism as well. So it's not a visual metaphor of samsar. And I repeat, samsar is wandering the world, and also samsar means world. As Radhakrishnan writes in the Principal Upanishad. But to bring this concept of samsara with subscendence is because it's a convergence point between Hindu and Sufi cosmology. In Hindu thought, the soul, which is known as Atma, migrates through realms seeking union with the universal. That universal is also known as Brahma in Hinduism, or cosmos. Just as Ibn al-Arabi's vision, the Sufi poet, by the way, the poet was in 12th century, born in, 12th century, 1165, born in Spain, Ibn al-Arabi. The real manifests as apophatic negation, flowing through forms in the imaginal barzakh, the intermediary realm. Both traditions dissolve rigid boundaries between beings and instead propose a medium-centric reality, coming to my point, unfolding itself through appearances. As Laura Mark writes, everything is an index and medium. So in this light, appearances are not mere illusions, but modalities of transmission. They index the real. They mediate being. There's a Vedic school of thought known as, like Frankfurt School, we know. In that sense, I'm using the word school. The name of the school is Advait Vedant, a school of Vedic teachings. The world is not unreal. It is relatively real. This relatively real is translated as, the original language is Vyavharik Satya. Satya is real, Vyavharik is relativity. a necessary medium. So that's the medium I'm trying to perhaps claim, through which the Atma, or the soul, or the atom, comes to know itself as Brahma, the cosmos, the infinite. And that's what we see in this film. So when the film shows goat, tree, charcoal, it's reality as medium through which soul's becoming is enacted in the film. Reality is not transcended, but subscended and embodied again and again. The medium does not represent reality. It is reality in flux. It's not a window or a mirror. It's a site where reality unfolds. In this case, the medium is cinematic screen and the whole apparatus. So in this case, it is not, as I said, it's not the mirror that represents reality, but it is the breath by which reality speaks. Thank you.